Welcome to season 3 of the Iceman Kicking Podcast. My name is Brett Arkellian. Kick your feet up, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Iceman Kicking Podcast.
Is this what you want? Then again, everything I'm going to tell you and everything that we're going to work towards together is with that goal in mind.
Welcome, specialists, coaches, dads of kickers, moms of punters, relatives, long snappers, and dogs that shag kickoffs to the Iceman Kicking Podcast. It's the podcast with cool questions and even cooler guests. And I'm your host, Brett Arkellian. Today, I am very excited. I'm joined by Temple Special Teams Coordinator Adam Scheier, who has accomplished a ton in his storied career. Just to give you a little bit of background here, with Rutgers and the Scarlet Knights in 2020 and 2021, they finished in the top 10, top 5 in 21 in special teams efficiency. Spending time also with Wake Forest, they were number 4 nationally in net punt in 2014 and then 8th in 2015. He's also spent time as an interim head coach with Bowling Green and had a lot of success on teams there, returning kicks and punts for touchdowns.
A 2018 Broyles Award nominee, which goes to the best assistant coach in the country, the godfather of special teams himself, and soon-to-be birthday boy, Temple Special Teams Coordinator and tight ends coach, Adam Scheier. Adam, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having me on, Brett. It was great seeing you down in Charlotte at the convention. And when you brought up this opportunity, I was excited. Certainly this time of year, always good to get back into talking ball. You know, you spend so much time recruiting and away from the office a little bit on the trails and spending much needed time with family around the holidays. You get a little bit away from the football. So it's good to be back getting in that flow with spring ball right around the corner.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is great to check out. I mean, this is one of my favorite things to do is, me with even when I started out coaching high school, which is where I originally met you. I don't know if you remember back in the day in 2018 with Mississippi State, but I was in Nashville and I would just go to a bunch of different high school or colleges and talk ball and connect. And so I'm fired up. I've known about your prowess with special teams, but man, to really do a deep dive and see all that you've done, you've really accomplished a lot in all phases. So I'm fired up to have you on here today.
Appreciate it. Good to be here again.
A little bit. So we like to start with our heavy hitters section, Coach. All right. This is brought to you by the Kicker's Bible. But a little bit of change of pace from what we talked about before, but your wife, Erica, is a veterinarian. And I know you get these questions all the time. All right. But you've had upwards of 19 pets. Okay. You've had multiple cats, dogs, parrots, pigs, even a hedgehog. Okay. My question is Ham Serene still around?
It's Hamrin. And the Ham of Hamrin is a tribute to Cameron Serenay, my tight end at Wake Forest. So, I wasn't sure that Erica and the pets were going to make it onto this podcast, especially right off the jump. But I guess if you know anything about the Scheiers and our household, it's busy enough with 4 kids that are separated by 5.5 years. But when you add in all the pets, it's madness. And then the coaching connection to all that is when my kids were old enough to really know who the players were on the teams that I coached. I was never going to say no to them getting a pet, whether they wanted a hamster or a new bird or, a new kitten, whatever it was. I just would put this out there. That's fine. You can get one, Erica. The kids have to name it after one of my players. So that became, and I've shared this story many times when this topic comes up, that became almost as prestigious as getting all conference honors if you had a pet named in the Scheier household. So Hamrin, Ham Serenay is still alive and kicking. He's about 7 years old. He's got a new best friend in our duck, Adam Korzquak, named after my punter at Rutgers, Adam Korzak. She goes by Matey as a tribute to his Australian background, but the two of them are inseparable throughout the day.
That is, there's a lot of things that set you apart, Coach, but I think that's super cool. And just the family aspect of all that is really cool. Do you have a favorite pet or a favorite name of one of your pets that you've had out of all those different characters?
A favorite name. I mean, Hamron's up there. Matey's up there. I've got 2 pets named after 2 of my former bosses. We have a cat named Meyer and a cat named Cliff. So had great experiences in Columbus with Coach Meyer, and out in Lubbock, Texas with Kingsbury. So only appropriate that they as well got pets named after them in our household.
They made it. They've finally made it when they get those names. And that was something I was going to ask you organically, Coach, too. And I mean, you have so many, and we'll kind of hit on it too, but so many kids that are athletes and they're great at what they do. Some people say that coaching, you're not around your family as much, and there's parts of that are true, but others say that they get experiences that no one else ever gets as a child. What do you have to say about, the moving? You guys have done it all. You've traveled around a little bit. What do you say to people that say they don't get, a full experience?
Well, I think you hit on it. And whether it's, our way of justifying the time away. One thing I would say is that my family, my wife and my kids included, and certainly there's bumps in the road in this profession, but they have been supportive and have enjoyed being a college football family. Yes, it comes with sacrifices. Your dad's not always around. You can't make every game. You can't make every dance recital. When you work for good people and they promote balance, which I'll hit on in a second, you can kind of, exactly what the word suggests, you can balance it off to some extent. There's always going to be a give and take. But like you said, they've gotten to experience things that most normal kids don't, whether it's, bring your friend to elementary school for a day and they're bringing a 6'5", 275-pound defensive end. Like, those kids aren't doing that. When your daughter is a budding basketball star and she's playing Pop-A-Shot down at the Cotton Bowl at a Dave & Buster's type place against J.K. Dobbins, like most kids don't get to do that. So again, I don't know if it's justification or if it is reality, but I know this. They have enjoyed some of the things they've got to experience. It does come at a cost, but when they're bought in and they're a part of this, you make it work. And one of the things that's awesome being at Temple, working for Coach Drayton, and it's something I've always strived for in this profession, and it's gotten harder as you climb the levels, as recruiting has kind of grown into this monstrosity of a process. Is you have to find that balance. And I've always talked to younger coaches that they've come up, whatever it is, you got to find that balance. And, when Coach Drayton said to us early in this process, he says, when he put this staff together, he said, I need you guys to have balance in your lives. I need you guys to get out of the office. I need you guys to get around your wives, to get around your kids. He says, because for me to get the most out of you, and for our players to get the most out of you, you have to be fulfilled at home. If you're not, they're not going to get the best of you. And when he said that, I'm like, I got a real one here. And it's been great because, in 1 year with him, I've kind of been able to, get that balance back, and he's great about it. I asked him, Coach, Maddie's got a track meet, starts at 5. He's like, you already know the answer. Go ahead. You got to leave at 3, whatever it is. So that's the family piece of this. And obviously when you choose a spouse, you got to find someone who understands what this is going to be. And I couldn't have found a better one. She loves this. She doesn't love all that came along with the last 25 years, but all in all, she loves football. She loves the competition. She loves the excitement. She loves how I am with the players. She loves getting to know the players. She loves the relationships she still has with some of the players I've coached 10, 15 years ago. So it is it's an interesting dynamic. And but I do stress to young guys that I mentor and talk to in this profession, you've got to strive for balance.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. And to have that balance where you're at now at a huge university, I think it's pretty awesome too. And to have that support too from your family is really cool. So take us back a little bit here. All right. You were a rangy playmaking safety at Dartmouth, and you talked a little bit. You played on all four. You were a core four guy. Is that right, Coach?
Yes.
Tell me, did you have a favorite unit that you like to play on? I know you said you like to sprint down and kick off, and no one would beat you down there. Was there a favorite unit that you played on, and what was that activity that you enjoyed?
Well, you got it right. It was kickoff cover. I wasn't the fastest on the clock, but I was the first one down the field. And our coach used to call it SGS, which was Scheier game speed. And I'm not, it wasn't in that 4.4 range. And let's not kid ourselves, but I was getting down there. If it was moving, I was hitting it. But that was clearly my favorite unit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and then you kind of come up. So special teams is important to you, and especially playing so much on teams, and talk a bit about your Ivy League background and coaching and how that shaped you as a teacher and a coach.
Well, I want to go back and address the rangy safety comment, because I certainly did not have great range, and that kind of relegated me to a special teams player, which kind of is where I developed this love for that aspect of the game. As a young coach,
savvy, huh? Is it maybe savvy?
Savvy, yes. I was probably a savvy safety. But as a young coach at Dartmouth, my first year out, and then really my second year at Columbia, where I kind of served as our special teams coordinator, Mike Kelleher's right-hand man, it was an easy way to have a voice at a young age, because on a smaller staff that they had in the Ivy Leagues at those times, nobody really wanted to put in the time to make that a differentiating factor in the game. And I would study it, and I would come up with schemes and ideas, and it was welcome because, again, it was something off their plate as they were coaching a position. And obviously at those schools at that level, and part of my background for the first, 10 years or so in coaching, you're also the team travel coordinator potentially. So you got to contact the hotels and set up the banquet rooms and, the rooming lists and the bus lists. And I mean, you're doing a lot. So for someone, a young coach, to come in and say, hey, I'll make sure all four units are prepped for you. I'll give you my thoughts. It gave me an early feeling like I could have an impact. And then as I did that, it gave me my first real opportunity, moving on from 3 years at Columbia, where I got my master's and was coaching outside backers, which was another awesome experience to be in a room in front of a group of guys at 24 years old. Because of the size of the staff, the defensive structure required me to coach a position. So I was doing that, helping Coach Kelleher. Was there for 3 years, got special teams coordinator position at Princeton, working for our former offense coordinator at Dartmouth, Roger Hughes, and talk about now I've got the title. Now it's my deal. It's my show. And, it was just an awesome experience. And that led me to my next job at Lehigh, where I was, again, coaching the wideouts and the running backs, but also doing the special teams, along with running the summer camps and team travel, which, again, when you ask, how does that prepare you for, that type of beginning in your career, prepare you for life after, or moving onward and upward into the profession, you have an appreciation for everything that goes into it. So when some of those things are taken off your plate, you're like, wow, this is, crazy how we did that back in the day when you had to make sure all the other stuff was taken care of along with getting your position ready. But special teams has always been something that I enjoyed. I enjoy the one play mentality. And I joke with, every offense coordinator I've ever worked with. I go, I don't get second and third down to get it right. I got one shot. And I think there is a there's a beauty in watching a well-executed, well-choreographed special teams scheme played out on a Saturday. And similarly, the frustration from that one breakdown in that choreographed scheme that doesn't get executed perfectly. And that's the difference between a game-changing play and not.
Yeah. Well, hey, you're preaching to the choir, Coach. I believe that 100%. There is beauty to a great executed scheme. And it's funny what you're talking about earlier with all your job responsibilities. I mean, nowadays, all those responsibilities, especially these big schools, you would have been the DPP, the DFO, the wide receiver coach, the special teams coordinator. So you wore a ton of hats. And I'm sure, and that kind of leads me to this next thing too. And so you spent time after that at Bowling Green, Dave Clausen. How did that experience, become the special teams coordinator and then eventually the interim head coach, and that time that you spent at Wake? What did you learn from those experiences and being the head coach and overseeing everything now? How did that change your view on being an assistant coach?
Well, one, being with Coach Clausen at BG and Wake, you take so many positive things from just how he builds a program and his process. He sticks to it. He believes in it, and his detail, the thoroughness with which he approaches things. You certainly take that away from those experiences. That 18 days that I was in the head coaching chair during the bowl prep, our last year at BG was eye-opening, because so much comes. Again, it was an 18-day window. It wasn't a season as a head coach, but even in that 18-day window, you're seeing just what comes across your desk, right? And just the responsibility of everybody in the program. Obviously, that was during a coaching transition. And once Coach Babers was named the new head coach, you have a sense of responsibility to the other guys on staff who weren't making the trip down to Wake Forest. You got to keep the players focused for the bowl game, along with any other things that are non-football related that come across your desk. Again, it was a small snapshot into what it's like to actually be a head coach. I'm sure, I'm not sure, I'm positive it's nothing like the actual process of running a program, but it did give you a little bit of an insight of to what that role entails. And it's a lot less football than a lot more administrative and organizing of a staff.
Yeah, you can kind of see from head coaches, or at least I've seen it, once they get done with all the administrative work and they get to do ball, it's almost relaxing to them, right? They kind of sit down and sink in the chair, and now they can finally talk with the offense. Or our head coach at UC Davis, Dan Hawkins, he loves sitting in and just talking special teams. I mean, that's their passion. All that other stuff is, co-curricular. Is there anything you got to do with that? Sorry, you're going to say something.
No, I was just going to echo your sentiment there. I mean, again, I wasn't so inundated with all the other stuff, but I certainly have seen, even in this last year when Coach Drayton, comes into an offensive meeting or steps into a special teams session in practice and is getting active. I know that's what he loves to do, and he's good at it. But the title he has, the seat he sits in right now, he doesn't get to do that as much because he's hired coordinators that he trusts. He lets us, do what we do. He has his input, no doubt, but he's building the culture. He's connecting with every player. He's dealing with administration, recruiting, alums, the boosters. He's trying to build this thing back to where it was a few short years ago. But you can see that glimmer in his eye when he gets that opportunity to coach our punt team and make a coaching point to whoever. And I know that's something he definitely enjoys.
Yeah. Yeah. And we love head coaches that get involved with special teams, right?
No doubt. I mean, if you're a special teams coordinator and you want to be creative and be aggressive and get after it on those units, I hope you have a guy that shares that same philosophy, because if not, it's it'd be a lot of let's just make sure we get the ball back, or let's just make sure we get the ball down the field a little bit.
Yep. Word for the wise. Now, I have a question about head coaches, Coach Scheier, and this is more an opinion based thing on what you think. Do you think nowadays with NIL and all the different, payments that you can, encourage or whatever, get going for your players and your team and the fundraising that goes on, does that head coach now become more of I wouldn't say a propagandist, but more of a, touch bases with people, a social person? Are people getting hired because they are better at connecting with boosters and alumni than actually being a good ball coach?
I mean, it's hard to say that they're not good ball coaches, but I think that's got to be a skill set that you have, because more than ever, not that it ever wasn't important, but more than ever, you've got to bring people into the fold and make them feel connected to want to give, because the finances that go into this are different than they were 5-10 years ago.
And there's no question. There's no question about that. And it's interesting to see how it's turning and changing. I guess it affects us a little bit less at the FCS level, but it's getting more and more competitive. And I'm sure it already is in the American Conference. So yeah, that part is interesting for sure. What about, okay, so you move on from there and you end up at Ohio State. I know Coach Meyer's received a lot of flack, but he is known for building one of the most successful programs in the country for a long amount of span. What did you learn, especially about special teams? We know he's a big teams guy. What did you learn during your time at Ohio State?
My time at Ohio State, I believe it was 11 months, was probably the most impactful 11-month period in my coaching career. I had come off a split at Wake, and I had moved on from Wake Forest and went up to Ohio State. And Coach Meyer really reconnected me with a lot of what I had gotten into coaching back in the beginning, about the relationships and, reaching the kids, reaching into their hearts and their minds, and instilling a passion in them and connecting. And obviously his expertise and emphasis on special teams. So the combination of that, the way he ran his culture, the power of the unit, you take care of your guys, they'll take care of you, and you get your unit one strong, and together we'll be strong and ready to take on this, whatever's in front of us. And just the way he did it, the passion with which he connected and demanded his coaches connect with their players, that reconnected me with why I coached. And, I went on from there and went on to Texas Tech and had one of my, if you can categorize it as that way, one of my best years as a coach, in terms of going into a program in a different part of the country, connecting with the staff, connecting with players, and really having an unbelievable impact on the field. So I've got great things to say about my time with Urban. He treated me well. He treated my family well when they came up to Columbus. And like I said, at that exact spot in my career, at whatever I was, 44 years old at the time, I needed it, and it was tremendously impactful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you've said before, you're talking about the connection aspect, and you said, your goal and your job is to tap into human spirits. And you talked about Coach Meyer, how they did that. Can you give me an example of, for a young coach who's trying to connect with their players, what's the best way to go about that? Or what's the easiest way to connect with your guys?
I think it boils down to just, you got to be you, and you got to, I wouldn't say come down to their level, but you have to at times get on their level. We use the expression drop the shield. You got to let them know that you're not a robot. You're not a X and O scheme drawing machine. You've got feelings. So not on purpose, but I will cry in front of my players, whether it's in a one-on-one conversation, in a special teams meeting. I'm going to share my story, and my story hasn't always been great. There's been some rocky roads and some bumps and some detours, and those things are emotional for me, and I share that with them. So there's a connection when they see you're real. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I put out on social media about my family, because I want them to know that this is really important to me. These people are really important to me. I'm proud of their successes. I think if you're real with people and you drop the shield, they know you care about them, and you open up and get them to drop the shield. Now, like, once that happens, I told my guys the other day, I said, if you believe that I care about you and I want only what's best for you, then you will never, ever second guess what's coming out of my mouth. Because, everything that comes out of my mouth is for one purpose. It's for you to achieve whatever you are destined to achieve in the classroom, on the field, and one day as a husband and a father. And once that relationship is established and they never have to second guess my intentions, that's when we can push them and push them as hard as we need to, because they know it's coming from the right spot.
Sure. And that you want to see them perform at their best. Right.
Absolutely. And I ask them all the time, is this what you want? Like, whatever it is, do you want to go to the league? Or I want to wear a single digit at Temple, which is the ultimate honor, whatever it is. And I say, okay, once you tell me that, then again, everything I'm going to tell you and everything that we're going to work towards together is with that goal in mind. And they say, yes, coach, that's what I want. I said, good. Same thing I told my kids. I told my daughter, she's 5 foot tall. She said, I want to be a D1 basketball player. I said, good. This isn't my dream. Yeah, I'll be super proud if you achieve this. But if this is what you want, I'll help you get there. If you don't want this, then I'll just be a regular dad and sit in the stands and be happy my kids out there participating. But I never shied away from the fact that I pushed those kids to achieve what they wanted to achieve. Now, they got inner drive, and their mother's a pit bull herself. I mean, she's, she gets after it too. But, I don't shy away from the fact that I pushed them because they told me they wanted it. If they didn't want it, I would have backed off. So no different. Kids, players, it's all the same.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. That's really impactful. And I think what you said too about not being afraid to be open. I know, at least personally for me this season, I had one of my favorite uncles who's always been around and in my life. And he recently found out that he had brain cancer, and opening up to them about where I was at, and I was going to miss a few days of practice, and showing them that side of me. I think they understood. One of the players had, kind of came up and expressed he had been through the same thing, and that they were there for me. And I think that really united us. And really, I'm not saying it's the reason why our specialists did well towards the end of the season, but our kicker did end up going 15 for 15 at the end of the year. So, that showed me that was key, to be open with them.
Yeah, no, I get chills just hearing you tell that story, because like I can point to so many of those individual stories where one thing you do, if it connects with one guy, well, guess what? You've reached that guy, and that's another guy that's in your corner. I remember our first game at Texas Tech. I had told the guys, hey, this is, I got let go at Wake, and I go up to Ohio State and have this great experience, similar to what I just shared with you. I said, and I'm here. And I said, my family's back in North Carolina because my oldest daughter's a junior and she's killing it in hoops, and I don't want to move her in the middle of her recruiting. So I'm here, and I'm here to help us get this thing going right. And again, I'm not an idiot. I know he was paying me well, and that was a coordinator job in the Big 12. But there's a sacrifice when you move across the country to coach a ball team and leave your family behind. And one of the guys came up and he grabbed me in the locker room. And he's like, Coach, I really appreciate and respect what you're doing here with your family back there, and how you're pouring into us. And that's not why I did it, but I was just letting him know who I am. And I knew I had reached that kid, and that kid ended up, whether it was going to happen anyway, that was our best special teams player. And I had him because I dropped the shield with him.
Yeah, drop the shield. I love that, 100%. Well, that kind of leads me into one of my other questions we're going to talk about later, Coach. But facing adversity, you talked a little bit about it in your marriage, in your life, in coaching. What's one event that's really shaped you or defined you as who you are today?
I think it was the 3 years that we as a family lived apart. When I was in Columbus, in Lubbock, and then in Starkville, they stayed in North Carolina because of the ages of my older two daughters, and because of the situations at Ohio State and Starkville. They weren't long-term jobs. They were opportunities to stay in the game at that level and gain some experience and make some connections and whatnot. But they were quality control type positions. So you really get a sense for the support you got back home. You get a degree of confidence in knowing you definitely married the right woman. You got kids that know that this is your passion. And another one of the sacrifices they had to make was, living apart. But, again, we made the best of it. And, that has shaped me because it's made me appreciate them, made me appreciate what we do. And it's made me moving forward, know that you need balance in this profession. And I'm thankful I work for a guy that believes that as well. And, I will continue to strive for that every day. Get in, get your work done, make sure you're connecting with your players, and then get home and be a husband and be a father.
You don't get that in a lot of places. That's awesome.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask too. Being a young coach, don't have a family, so I've been able to bounce around and then not really worry about anything else besides myself. Was there ever a discussion too about moving your family with you, or was that understood that was analyst spots?
Yeah, it was analyst spots. It was to get me to that next job, and more importantly, it was when you talk about the sacrifices you make, right? Even if that job at Ohio State was a little bit more permanent, it was more important that my daughter stayed in high school in Clemens, North Carolina, where she was established as a captain on the basketball team, and she was in the middle of her recruitment, and I didn't want to jeopardize that. And that comes with sacrifices. But the plan all along was, once we moved to North Carolina, the two older ones were going to graduate from high school there, and we were going to make it work. And then there was a little bit of a gap between the second and third child, that once I did land back at a position that was more long-term and stable, we were going to relocate the family and get back together.
Yeah. Wow. That's great that you have a family like that can support you like that. Hey, and going back a little bit before you started this jump around too, I want to ask you, because you guys were so dominant at Wake and net punt, what do you think separates? What was the one factor that made you guys really good at that? Was it great gunners, or was it a great punter? Like, what set you guys apart during those years?
It is combination of punter and scheme. We run a unique scheme, and it's a numbers game. We release more people on the snap than most people in the country. So you got more gunners, you should have better net punt. Now you need a good punter. And we were blessed at Rutgers to have one of the best to ever do it. We set the NCAA record in 2021 for best single season net punt in the history of college football. Great gunners too, great protection, but Adam Korzak really made that thing happen. But the scheme plays into that, because we're releasing 4 gunners and a long snapper, so 5 people are releasing on the snap. It's tough to get returns versus that. No question, Adam Korzak pushed it to the levels that he did in terms of being ranked first in the country with an NCAA record and third in the country the year before in 2020. But even at Texas Tech with Don Panazzolo, another one of my Australian guys, I think we were 18th in the nation in net punt. So there's something to be said about the system, the number of gunners. Again, that's not rocket science. That's just math. The more guys you have going down the field on a snap, the harder it is to get returns. But you need that punter as well to be able to locate the ball the way we do.
Yeah, I love that. I love different formations. I love getting to different things because of the mindset that you're taking advantage of other teams. Is it a little bit of just, hey, we're daring you to send pressure, or because what teams you would think would do is put more guys in the box and you can handle. But, I love watching remember even studying your guys' Rutgers stuff a few years ago and how exciting that was. Is it kind of daring teams to do something, or is it just like, hey, we're going to put these guys out there and we dare you to stop them?
Yeah, it's you have to have answers. So if they want to put an extra guy in the box, well, the scheme is already set up where there's a guy we're beating with the operation anyway. But we'll kick it faster, or we'll kick it deeper. We'll make it harder for you to get there. If people try to put 2 returners back to try to stop the ball from rolling, well, we got a chance to hold it a little longer potentially and still get guys down the field. So it is a cat and mouse game. The multitude of formations and multitude of eligibles we have in the backfield has people always concerned with fakes, because I think we've run 2 fakes out of it, but the menu is limitless because of how our guys are aligned. And, people have to say, do I want to do this and not be sound versus that? It's tough to get a return. Do I want to get the block? Well, if I go through a block, there's 1 returner back. There's a chance there's a ball rolling 50, 60, 70 yards down the field because we can't get to it. So it's a who has the pen last kind of deal. And like I said, it's been effective. It's been a combination of factors.
It's fun. I can't wait to study more stuff on that and even ask you a few questions or 2 about it. But tell me about, and this is why I said you've kind of done it all, whether it's coaching at different schools and areas and levels, but also having success in different phases. I mean, your guys' return game, even at Rutgers, returning kickoffs, returning punts, what was the key ingredient there? Was it, schematically, or is it, a mentality? What set you guys apart?
I think all of it starts, when you said mentality, and to me that meant emphasis on teams. And at Rutgers, our head coach certainly put a tremendous emphasis on special teams. Places I've been with Dave Clawson, emphasis on special teams. Coach Drayton, emphasis on special teams. So that's part of it. Buy-in from the players, how do we get that? Our guys come to Temple to play on special teams because they've come to be a part of this culture. This culture says that's important. I'm going to do it. They've come to play. They've come to win games. How are we going to win games? By generating field position for our offense and defense. How do you do that on special teams? So if you're an offensive player, you want to be better on offense. Let's start with the ball closer to the goal line. So start on the kickoff return team. You're a defensive player. Same thing. Whether it's you want to start your defensive possession as far down the field as possible, we'll get on the kickoff cover team. So they come to play, and that's the way we present it to them. So the buy-in is the second piece. I think with certain units, obviously you better have a good returner, just like I mentioned with the punter. But the thing I take some pride from with our success at Rutgers, while Aaron Crookshank was as talented a returner as I've had the pleasure of coaching, some of those returns were pretty well blocked up. And that's a combination of our staff's buy-in in teaching our guys, the scheme itself, and then he's the home run hitter. But again, as I mentioned earlier, as a special teams coach, you take a lot of pride in when you see that choreographed 11-man dance executed perfectly on a Saturday. Those are the ones you love. The one the returner makes 6 guys miss and there's 4 missed tackles. You're happy you have that guy on your team, but you're not like puffing out your chest like, hey, we drew it up, we drilled it, and we executed it. You just have a dude. So, again, it's like anything. I'm not going to say, well, it's all players and it's all, that returner or that punter. It's not all scheme for sure, but it's a combination. And then it's a culture wise thing. Your staff's bought in. Your staff's making it important in their position meetings. They're making it important for those 8-minute blocks that you got in practice. They're coaching their guys, so if, they're coaching that front side center on kickoff return. So he's executing his 1/11th of that play. So it's a combination.
Yeah, there's no question. I know when your return back there makes 8 guys miss, that's not teach tape. That's just having a better athlete on the field than the other team. But it is exciting for sure. Hey, and I got a question for you when it comes to punt return. A lot of teams, guys I've talked to, there's 2 different trains of thought. Where do you think punt return big punt returns are missed out on? Is it on the line of scrimmage? I know a lot of guys believe in thugging, right? Being aggressive off the line of scrimmage and grabbing those wingtips. Or is it, for example, like Maryland, I've seen in the past, they'll drop 4 guys off the line of scrimmage and then sprint kind of an MDM deal within 10 yards of the returner and then turn around and block. Where do you think more returns are won or lost? Line of scrimmage or maybe more in that harass or transition or finish phase?
I think they're lost at the gunner position. I think we always talk about if we can eliminate the fair catch, again, if we have a dude back there, or if we block it up perfectly, or if their scheme allows us to take advantage of something, if you can just eliminate the fair catch, you can get your returns. So I studied the heck out of TCU's punt return, and they do a similar deal where they retreat guys. Because again, if you can just eliminate the gunner and that guy doesn't have to do this, you've got a shot to get it started. I mean, you get it started, I get it. If you hold the guy on the line for a second and a half longer, whatever the stats are, it's 10 yards, I'm good. But the guy with the ball in his hands is a better athlete than every one of those core protectors. If you can eliminate the fair catch, I mean, some of that, ties into the punter, but, short kicks, tough to get one.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, you see so often, of course, in the NFL, why those guys make so much money, those gunners and corners, it's because they affect that play. So, yeah, I think that's a very relative and fun. I will get more into that, studying a lot of that stuff on punt return, because we've had some good guys back there, but, it's a little hard to get it going. All right. So we have a rapid fire round, Coach, brought to you by the Kicker's Bible. We are going to ask you a few questions about work and life, and you just tell me not a one-word answer, but a short answer on what you think about that. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Okay. I want to know about some coaching proverbs and quotes, because I think it's so cool. And the coaches that have been around, they always got some good quotes that they've amassed in their time. I know one of your quotes was, they don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. What does that mean to you?
Kind of just what we talked about earlier. I think maybe the older generation, you come in with a resume and a list of accomplishments. I think it's more of, okay, this guy is good. It's proven. It's on paper. There it is. Let's just do what he says. Whereas now, I think this generation kind of it's more that relationship based, and I don't think they really care how much I know about kickoff return or punt protection until they know how much I care about them. Once they know I care about them, well, then it's, he cares about me and he knows his stuff. Well, all right, let's go run through the wall.
There's no question. Just like you said, creating that buy-in by dropping the shield. Is there any other quotes that you like to recite, or any proverbs that you tell your guys on a daily basis? Maybe it's not about football, maybe it's about life.
One I use, it's really to keep them humble and hungry. I've used it with my kids, and I use it with my kickers, but I also use it with my position players as well. You're only as good as your next, whatever it is, your next kick, your next snap, your next block, your next reception. I've got one of my tight ends that will make a play, and he'd start, and I'd say, hey, no one cares. You're only as good as your next play. It's just that next play mentality. For kickers, it's that next kick mentality. It's stay grounded, trust your training. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't go back and try to re-kick when you can't do that. You're only as good as your next kick. So that you're only as good as your next, that humble and hungry mentality. Another one, my son probably gets tired of hearing it because he's going through a little bit of a frustrating hoop season now. They're losing some close games, and I'm like, hey man, there's no losing, there's only learning. There's no failure, there's only fine tuning. There's no defeat, only a deeper drive. And so I throw the little alliterations in there for him, and I get it, Dad. But And then the last one I use on kickoff cover all the time with those high speed decisions is, if you're right, you'll never be wrong. Because there's no black and white with which way to avoid, how to avoid. You got to make a decision at full speed against a pretty good athlete in space, and whatever decision you make, live with it. If you're right, if you weren't wrong. If you were wrong, we'll look at why you were wrong.
Yep. Wow. I love that. Those are some good ones. And especially, I know your son probably hates it now, but he'll probably think about that in 15, 20 and be able to recite that off the top of his head. And I was going to ask you too, kickoff real quick. People have different alliterations for I know at Marshall, we were 15, and this might be an urban thing, but 15 or more backdoor, 15 or less button press. Do you have a general guideline you tell them, or is it just that alliteration you just spoke on?
I don't use the one that you just mentioned. Again, it gets back to, if you can avoid either side and still be in proper relationship with the ball, we're good. Whether you're inside of 15, I think as you get closer to 15 or 10 from the ball, well, now it's all button press at that time. But I've never used it in that way.
Yeah, there's a few different ones. It's interesting, but yeah, if you got guys avoiding different ways, right, you're going to create a hole in your kickoff coverage. So everyone having the proper leverage, right, is what's most important on kickoff. Okay. What about, talk to me too, and we kind of hit on this earlier, but you got, a big family, and your kids are stars in a lot of different sports. I mean, basketball, track, baseball, even dance, right, and football. When you were coaching, did you work on that with them? Were there days, how did you kind of foster them? Because they've all had so much success. How did you foster that success as you were coaching?
We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, just providing them with what they needed for success. And, no different than we tell our athletes, if the only time you're putting in is the time that's required in terms of team practices, you're only going to get so much out of it. So it's providing those extra opportunities, whether it's travel leagues or working with personal trainers in the given sport, just providing them with those opportunities. And then when I had free time, it was working with them myself. My dancer, I didn't instruct her very much. I did partake in the dad's dance at one of her studios up in Bowling Green, and did a killer toe touch, almost tore my groin. But I think the dancing thing was on her. Although I do think she gets more of her dance moves from me than her mother. But just fostering that environment where if you want success, it takes what it takes, and it requires a greater sense of commitment than just what's required.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I'm sure she got the athleticism and flexibility from you there. So how about making in-game adjustments? And we talk about this a little bit. We talked about before. I mean, kickoff, kick return essentially you have a 2-minute timeout or 2-minute, 30-second timeout a lot of times. How do you go about making in-game adjustments?
It starts with getting the correct information from the previous rep. So that's a combination of our game day eyes process that we have, which incorporates coaches in the box and coaches on the field. Those game day eyes give us the information that we need. And it's sometimes tough to get. And then it also requires getting information from the players coming off the field. And I've made a point to grab them when I can right off the field. So right off that rep before they get too deep involved with the other side of the ball. Combination of those two things. And then you got to grab them on the sideline between series, because you're right. You don't have, at least on kickoff return, the worst thing in the world is when they say, hey, we're rolling, there's no TV timeout, because you got to scramble to get them ready, and there's no time to make an adjustment at that point. So you got to grab them at different times. You got to be walking. It's a little bit easier when I was a standalone coordinator. Now that I'm back coaching the tight ends, my time is a little bit more taken when we're on the offensive side of the ball. But you got to get that information to them in pieces. And then when you do have that TV timeout, or when we're getting ready to punt and that group is huddled together on a sideline, you can make a quick adjustment. But if there's anything with the board, it's kind of on a one-on-one. Hey, you're talking to the front side guard and the punt team, hey, he's going to do this, so you'll end up blocking this guy. Because how many schemes are people really carrying into a game? So if you've seen it once or twice, it's probably what you're going to see the rest of the day. But you're always ready for everything. But I think a combination of getting the information on the front end from the game day eyes operation, getting information from the players, the ones you trust, in terms of an overall scheme knowledge, and then getting it back to the guys that need the information for that next rep.
Yeah, I think the eyes and talking to the players, I think that's really overlooked. Do you just encourage them to always give you feedback, or do you have to go hunt them out and try to run them down after they get off the field?
It's a combination. And again, the guys that, if you're a defensive guy coming off the field and the offense is up, we should be able to grab him right then before he goes and meets with the defense coaches and vice versa. But at times you got to go circle back to him. Our punt team is littered with defensive starters. Well, they're up next after we punt, so you don't get a chance to grab them, but you got to circle back and hope there's some retention as to what they saw, whether it's just confirming what we saw up in the box or on the field. You just want to get that ironed out.
Yeah, there's no worse feeling than sitting there and being like, what just happened on that, kickoff return, or who got loose? So that is clutch. That's something I like to reinforce with our guys, or need to more. Kind of along with that, and when you're talking about in-game stuff, what's a fundamental in special teams that you think gets overlooked, or something that you've seen people stress that you thought was helpful to their units?
I think I wouldn't say it's a fundamental. I would say it's the fundamentals. And I am I guess the first step in fixing a problem is admitting you have one. Like, I am a scheme guy. I like to get in the office on Sunday, watch the opponent, and find out how I'm going to expose what they do schematically. Todd Goebel, who I've gotten to know over the years at NC State, does a phenomenal job of emphasizing fundamentals even during the season, because that's when you lose them, is during the season. Because you drill them all spring, you drill them in preseason camp, and then to a fault, and again, I'll be 50 in a couple of months, I'm still trying to figure this piece out, the balance between fundamentals and scheme, is finding that way to drill them in season to where you're not taken away from the scheme tweak that you're making that week that's going to potentially be critical to your success. So I wouldn't say it's a single fundamental. I would say it's the fundamentals that you use across the units. And again, I got to get better,
Yeah. Well, you guys do some really sweet stuff, but I'm sure implementing that stuff, it is hard at times to incorporate those fundamentals. And I'm sure there's ways you can do it. I know at Virginia Tech on Sundays, we would practice and we'd have 4 periods of special teams, and it was all our base drills. It was a punt net drill, and it was, punt return, working on our hold up and harass phase stuff. And we do a kickoff, working on avoiding, and then a kickoff return drill. So yeah, I know that there's different ways to do that. I think you're right, though. It's easy to forget about that once you get going in the season.
I've held on to for so long that the technique and fundamental work you do in spring and preseason camp will carry you through, because you get the game reps that now supplement as your technique work. You get the practice reps where you're still executing the fundamental, just maybe with a slight scheme tweak. But I still think there's merit to somehow working it into where, hey, let's take this period, even if it's every other week, because now that's still more than I have done. So I'm still ironing how we'll handle that next season. But again, if you stop evolving, if you stop growing, well, then you're hurting your program. And we're still talking about how this spring is going to be different than springs in the past. We're really taking a deep dive into how we want to go about special teams. Last spring, our first spring at Temple, we got all 4 phases in, all the systems in, front side, back side of all 4 core units. And I felt great about that. Combination of scheme work, combination of technique work. Mm-hmm. This spring, I'm looking at doing some things differently to enhance our execution. I think the knowledge of what we do is there. And again, with so many newcomers, we're going to have to start over with those guys. But you're always looking to change things and do it better. Not change for the sake of changing, but change if there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. Just like you said, the first way to fix the problem is acknowledging you have a problem. So that's awesome that you go back through like that. Okay. So one of my last rapid fire questions here, Coach, is the Northeastern accent. I mean, you originally hail from the Bronx, right? And having that background, I mean, I've worked under some awesome guys, especially being in California. It's, people sound different. Hawk talks about it all the time. I worked for Chris Monfiletto at Rice. He had a really thick Northeastern accent. Is there a regional term, or is there some things that you remember saying growing up that was, unique to the area?
I mean, I would say no. I mean, just the standard words that came in and out of phase at the time. The one thing I would say is I've lost my Northeast accent to a large degree. My wife's accent is almost like you wouldn't recognize her if you heard a videotape of her talking from 25, 30 years ago. I mean, she was like straight out of Staten Island. Because we've been in Ohio and North Carolina, I think we've lost a lot of it. But I can't think of anything, except when you jump back into, hey, use guys, what's going on? You could turn it back on, but that wasn't, it's something that, again, I'm a proud New Yorker, but I've loved living every place I've lived in, whether it was Bowling Green, Ohio, Clemens, North Carolina, Starkville, Mississippi, Lubbock, Texas, all been great places. And now being back in Philly, where my wife and I got engaged while she was a vet student at University of Pennsylvania, it's kind of, come full circle for us.
Yeah. Wow. That is really cool. That journey and everywhere you've been, I think, is awesome. I've done a little bit of that, but not to that extent. And actually, I don't know if I told you, I went to Lincoln University, which is 45 minutes south of Philly. It's an HBCU Division II school. So I got to experience Philly. It's a hell of a city. It's awesome. So,
awesome.
Cool, Coach. Well, hey, man, I really do appreciate all the time you took. We're wrapping up here, but I got a few more questions for you. But, man, it is really cool to break it down and see how much you love talking about special teams. You spent some time. I know there's a video. I know we've talked about your 18 days of being a head coach. It almost looked like you're in a witness protection program in the video. You had like a dark face, and this is during the Bowling Green days. I couldn't really make out your face, but the facts you were spitting were awesome. What if you became a head coach again? What is the first thing you do to build your culture?
I think it starts with hiring staff and hiring a staff that is aligned with you, that approaches the profession the same way as you do, the way you want it to be approached in your program. And then let them promote the culture, let them coach, let them be who they are and establish relationships and, practice that alignment with your core values. And, I'm excited where I'm at with Coach Drayton. And I think when he put this staff together, there were any number of guys he could have hired to assume the roles of any one of the 10 positions that he hired. But he wanted to hire guys that were good family men, good husbands, good fathers. And he really wanted to build relationships with our players, because I think that's going to be our secret sauce, so to speak, at Temple is really connecting with these guys. This program has been a premier program on the group of 5 level in the recent past. And you're talking bowl game 3 years ago, 17th ranked team in the country, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it was. It has been a top program. Number of guys in the NFL still today, it's tops in the group of 5. It's more than than 2/3 of the Power Five in terms of putting forth that NFL talent. But that's going to be our secret. We're going to progress in the world of NIL just like everybody else in the American is. But we're not going to buy players. We're never going to be that school. But what we are going to be is a group of coaches and a group of players that pours into each other. Like we said, it drops the shield, develops meaningful relationships, and then we'll go from there.
That's awesome. It does start with the coaches for sure, and the culture that they bring. So I think that's really cool. What do you think about the new conference realignment? You know, in the American now, you're getting some of those teams, Rice and some of those teams that were in Conference USA. Is that favorable for you guys, or, what's going to be different about this new look conference here?
I wouldn't say favorable. It's going to be a competitive. I think it's going to be a more wide open conference. Heck, Tulane was a 2-win team 2 years ago. They won the conference this year. So the fact that Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF are leaving, 3 of the traditional powers, but you're bringing in, UTSA, you're bringing in new staffs at FAU, new staffs at Charlotte. Rice just went to a bowl game. You're bringing in people. UAB is a traditional group of 5 power. You've got good teams coming in. I think it's going to be a very competitive, wide open league. I think our style of play is going to be a little bit different, and that Temple tough mentality is going to take us where we want to go. But we've got a lot of work to do. We're excited to get after it here in year 2.
Yeah, I'm fired up for that. I think that it's exciting with all these different new teams and some, like you said, some exciting up and coming programs. So that should be a great situation too. So, all right. So a little bit about your coaching background. Who influenced you in your coaching methods? Who would you say you modeled yourself after?
I think I've been influenced, obviously, it's without question, by everybody or certain people that I've touched or crossed paths with along the way, whether it was, the guy who recruited me out of high school, Buddy Stevens, just his passion and charisma. Me and all my college teammates, we were swept up by that. Working with and for Pete Lembo and his detail and how he goes about things. I already mentioned Coach Clausen and the way he goes about his business of building a program, the patience it takes. Obviously, Urban Meyer was tremendously influential. Greg Schiano has taught me a lot about, how the mind works and how to best coach in sound bites and reach players. And, Stan Drayton in a year's time has influenced me. And, I shared with you kind of offline a little bit ago. I always go back to an article I read in the New York Times about your head coach there, Dan Hawkins, back from his Boise State days, and just how he talked about, this is what I took from the article. Maybe I'm misremembering or whatever. Just be yourself. And, if you're true to yourself and you stay in line with the goals and the vision of the program, be yourself, because that's going to be the best version of who you are, instead of trying to be someone you're not. And it's okay if you do things differently. You don't have to fall into a cookie cutter version of what a college football has to look like. And I remember reading that, and I honestly can't remember if it was when I was still in high school and I was, debating about what I would do for the rest of my life. When I was in college, I kind of knew I was going into coaching, or I was a young coach, and I was like, you know what? I don't know this guy. He's on the other side of the country, but I identify with what he values in terms of people and connecting and building relationships, and how that's critical to what we're trying to do with football as, the end result.
Sure. That's really cool. I mean, I partially because I feel like I really connect to you in that way, because I've learned from Hawk, but also all the Hall of Fame coaches that, you've learned from. That's awesome that you've been able to shape your career, and it shows all the success you've had. But I do agree there with Hawk. He's very much about being himself. And even we had our senior or signing day party or whatever with alumni, and someone said, what's uncommon engineering? That's our hashtag, whatever we use. And it's like, it's who we are. We're going to be different, we're going to be comfortable in our own skin, and we're going to get players that want to be pushed to the next level. And just that being yourself, and the work-life balance too that you hit on. I mean, this is one of the first places that, he stresses it so much. He encourages the players to have a great work-life balance and do, study abroad. And we're doing winter ball instead of spring ball next week, essentially, because he wants them to finish the quarter and then they'll be able to do their own thing. Now, I understand that's FCS, so that's a little bit different, but I think that's really cool that resonate with you from some guy on the other side of the country. And that's what I love about football too, and coaching, is that I get to connect with people like you that are awesome outside the box thinkers. And you might not be from anywhere near Fresno, California, but I might bump into you and we have a good chat about ball. So I think that's really cool, Coach. Can you tell me, wrapping up here, what was your favorite team you ever coached, or if you had a favorite player or favorite game you ever won, any of those, what comes to mind there?
Just quickly off the top of my head, favorite team would probably be that 2013 MAC championship team at Bowling Green. That was a group of guys, group of coaches, group of players that kind of came in together, went through some really hard times earlier in our time together. 2010 was a rough season, but it was one of those deals where we stayed the course. Again, Coach Clausen's program building philosophy, stayed the course. We recruited, we retained, we developed, we got it going. And it all culminated with an unbelievable season with a great group of guys, a group of seniors that kind of all committed to us when things weren't going well. Probably favorite team right there. Favorite game, first one that jumps out, is my last game coaching at Lehigh. For those of you that know, Lehigh Lafayette is the most played, I don't know if it's oldest, I think it's most played rivalry in college football. And it's a pretty cool rivalry. Schools are located, 15, 20 minutes apart in eastern Pennsylvania. And we had just endured a 4-year losing streak, which if you know anything, if you've ever been a part of a real intense rivalry, that's tough to handle 4 years. And didn't know it was my last game, but my wide receivers that were playing for me were 3 seniors that I had for all 4 years. And in this profession, that's rare. And even in my young career, that was rare to have a group that you saw all the way through from their freshman year to their senior. And they balled out that game. I mean, making diving catches, touchdowns, awesome. I mean, just really had their best collective game as a group. And we ended this streak and won the game. And one of my wide receivers, Siku Yansani, who I'm still in contact with, who got into coaching. He's out on the left coast right now coaching, I believe at San Jacinto. He goes and grabs the game ball and gives it to me. And it's actually up on my bookshelf right behind me. He gave me the ball as a thank you. He didn't know I was leaving Lehigh, because I didn't know I was leaving Lehigh after that season. But it was, hey, this is my last game. And, Coach, thank you. This was for you. So that one comes to mind. But there certainly are other memorable games, Ohio State, Penn State in 2017, where we blocked the punt down 11 with, 11 minutes to go in a game, really changed the outcome there. I could think of others, but certainly that Lehigh game and then and that Ohio State Penn State game are up there.
Well, that Lehigh game, that commitment and obviously the connection you built with those players was so deep, man. They just wanted to do everything they could in their final game to, support you and go kind of out with a win for them. So that speaks a lot to the connection.
Cool story about that young man, Siku Yansani, right? So my kids are young back then, and my daughter wants to have maybe the Summer Olympics were going to happen later that summer. She's a June birthday. So she wants to have a Olympic birthday party. So again, I've got the art background, so I'm making all the flags and cutting them out. And each of her friends is going to be represented in a different country. And all the kids are out in the backyard playing and whatever. And I got Siku to come in with a torch. So he runs in the back and runs around the front yard and through the fence to the backyard. holding the Olympic torch. So it was awesome. You know, he was a part of her birthday celebration. I think my kids used to I used to make them jerseys for the school they were at. They used to get to pick a player. I think actually that one year they all wore Siku Yansani jerseys, number 9 at Lehigh. So just a cool story about how he was involved with my kids and with my family, and just one of those, you know, cool experiences in this profession.
It's like you were talking about earlier, right? That they got that experience to hang out with who in their eyes, I'm sure, was the best wide receiver in the country, you know, and he comes running through with
they didn't know any better. He used to have the nickname Stuntman because he would often dive for balls that he didn't have to dive for. And ironically enough, this one catch he had in that Lehigh Lafayette game was a post that he literally, if he didn't all out dive and get parallel to the ground and catch it with his fingertips, he had no shot. So for all the stuntman catches that he made that were questionable whether you needed to, in the biggest game of his career, he laid out for one and caught it. It was unbelievable. Wow. And all those stuntman catches prepared him for that moment right there. Absolutely.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, dang, Coach, this has been a great time. I love, you know, talking ball with you, and it's always exciting to have someone who's done it all and kind of seen it all bounce around like that. So thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Appreciate you, man. It's a lot of fun. Hope to do it again sometime.
Yes, sir. Do you have anything you want to plug? Anything exciting going on in your life? You got any side projects or encouraging people to come to the Temple spring game?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to take it day by day. You know, I'm gonna enjoy this little time off we have after signing day. I'm gonna head down to, well, my son's got a hoop game tomorrow night. My daughter's gonna track meet on Saturday. She just had her signing day ceremony today, which is awesome. Kind of put a cap on that whole experience for her. And we're gonna all head down to Philly on Sunday night for the whiteout as Temple takes on Houston, number 3 team in the country, for sole possession of first place in the American Conference. Hopefully it's a sold out Leah Corus Center on Broad Street. So that's kind of the projects. That's kind of what I got online is the next 4 days. That's about it.
That's awesome. That's really exciting. That where did your daughter end up signing for track?
She's going to run down at the University of Miami.
Wow. The U, baby. That's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. And your other daughter's obviously there already. So I'm sure that factored into her decision a little bit.
It did. It's a really, I think, unique and cool experience for them to share 1 year together. I did tell her, please don't let that be the main factor to choose Miami, but the byproduct is, yeah, they're going to have a year together. They're going to try to take an elective course together, just something that's cool, right? That most people, I don't know, I guess most people don't go to school with their siblings, and I'm sure some people do, but yeah, it'll be cool. Save my wife a trip because she can bang out 2 for 1, at least for 1 year. And yeah, excited, really connected with the coach down there. Excited about the opportunity to run in the ACC, and just a great school overall, great part of the country. And when I can get away, I look forward to getting down to South Beach as well.
Yeah, that's a good excuse for you to go down there too.
Absolutely.
Awesome, Coach. Well, it's been a great time. I appreciate it. That's been Adam Scheier with Temple Special Teams.
A word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by The Kicker's Bible. The Kicker's Bible. Ever wondered about how many kicks you should do during practice after pulling your quad multiple times? Repeatedly snapping the ball over your punter's head? Keep getting dumped by all your girlfriends for missing kicks? Well, we can't help with all those things. But for some of those, there's The Kicker's Bible. Proven training methods and secrets used by NFL specialists, written by yours truly, Brett Arkelian, with over 20 NFL specialist accounts, including personal excerpts from record-setting and Hall of Fame specialists David Akers and Shane Graham. If you are interested in any of these fantastic tips and excerpts discussed in this episode, visit IcemanKicking.com or go to my Twitter bio, Iceman_kicking.